Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Welcome to Trading Card Therapy, episode number 97. I appreciate each and every one of you who take the time to tune in to our episodes all about card collecting. If you want to check out old episodes, you can do that on our Just Collect YouTube channel, as well as Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. We have an incredible guest lined up for today's show. Before we get to Matt and the Matty C Collection, I just wanted to take a moment to make two announcements. The first one is recently our company, Just Collect, has been made aware, unfortunately, of a scammer out there, meaning this company that takes someone's website and makes the information look like their own. And so we've been made aware of this. I believe it was going on through Facebook. In other words, there's a company using our logo trying to sell cards at what appears to be incredibly low prices. So I wanted to make sure that you folks know we're doing everything that we can to try to combat this company. Keep in mind that there's only so much that we can do, but we've filed a police report. We have cyber insurance. We've been in touch with our cyber insurance company and, of course, the local authorities. That being said, please, whether it be it's our company or anyone else, or if you're going to go to the National Sports Collectors Convention in a couple of months, if it's too good to be true or seriously too good to be true, it likely is. And if you're ever unsure, if you're buying something over the internet, a card or another type of collectible, reach out directly to the company versus just placing a random blind order and hoping for the best, because it's often not going to turn out well for you, the collector. So please keep an eye out. And if we can do anything additional, or if you hear of anything, you can contact me directly at my email address, which is Leighton, Leighton, @justcollect.com. The other thing that I want to share with you folks before we bring on Matt, collection that just came in. And this is what a collection that is a few decades old, that hasn't been touched in several decades, from the late 50s and 60s can look like. So you can see you got some mantles. They're in pretty nice shape, but certainly not perfect, but nice. A nice sharp 64, 58. I'll just take you through the other stars. Bunch of maze cards. So I would tell you that based on my experience, these are a little bit better than average. Certainly not mint. You're not going to find many 8s in there, but there's also not, 2s and 3s. So that was kind of a fun collection that we just got in. If you want to see the full story and the video about this collection, be sure you check out our website, justcollect.com, and go to our blog, where we've told the story and put out videos on hundreds of collections of vintage cards that we bought over the years. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Matt.
Yo.
Hey, Matt, how are you today?
How's it going? Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, I forgot. You're in Cali, so you're a little bit in the coffee mode still, right?
Yes. Exactly right here.
Cheers. Well, I have water, but nonetheless, cheers.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. It's always a welcome reprieve from work.
Yeah, the daily grind, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt, for those that don't know you, if you could be so kind as to just kind of reintroduce yourself for someone who might be watching and seeing you for the first time, as far as your journey, as a kid, kind of taking you up to current day as far as sports, and then how did the card collecting kind of intersect for you?
Sure. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and was turned on to, I had two older cousins who were very active playing baseball. They played baseball in Staten Island. And growing up in where I grew up, it was sort of, there was always a way to play some form of baseball, whether it was wiffle ball on the sidewalk and this crack is first base, and over that telephone line where it bisects that tree is a home run, to spray painting, a box with the X in it for the strike zone, sponge balls, blue balls, like everything anything, right?
Tennis, backyard home run derby, stickball, of course. Tennis, baseball.
Driveways, tennis balls.
Errors, yeah. We used to play errors on our driveway, of course.
That's it. Tennis balls and aluminum bats, like any permutation, combination possible, we would figure it out. So I was always into it. And then in '86, I was at my grandmother's house on 12th Avenue in Brooklyn, and my cousin called. So I'm born in 76, so I must have been 10, and he was probably 12. And I'll never forget, I remember this like it's funny what you remember, right? And I remember him like, you got to go find a store that sells Donruss. And I was like, what's Donruss? He's like, it's a type of card. There's a card. It's Jose Canseco. It says rated rookie on it. It says rated rookie in blue on the left. And you got to get that, right? And so then and I didn't get it because there wasn't Donruss or Fleer in the neighborhood, right? We were very blessed. There were, growing up where I grew up in Bay Ridge, it seemed like there was a card store on every block, right? And there was so many great ones. And so when he came to visit once, he took me to a corner store and I bought some packs of Topps, and he would explain to me. So I was playing a lot of baseball, but I was watching it casually. And then, I got a Gooden, and I got the Gooden Record Breaker, which is a gorgeous card. And all those, the record breakers from the 86 set were all gorgeous photography. The Vince Coleman stands out. The Valenzuela stands out. They killed it in that subset. And so I was hooked. I just loved them. I loved the size. I loved the pictures. I loved the statistics. We would keep our statistics in wiffle ball and shit on the street, posing as different players. Like I remember my neighbor across the street, best friends at the time, across the street, down the block, we would have like graph paper, legal paper, and we'd play with our lineups. So, here's my average as Eric Davis. Here's my average as Darryl Strawberry. And of course, you had to mimic the stance as well. So I mean, it was just all teed up to love cards, and so that was it. And I started collecting, and then there was a big hiatus, probably sophomore, junior, senior year in high school. Then the summer before college, I kind of checked back in with it, was into it, and then after college, sort of getting your first grown adult paychecks. It's almost becomes like, what are the things I really wanted as a kid, right? So it was like a Miss Pac-Man machine for the corner of the apartment. And it was, imagine having, because growing up, the Brett and Yount rookies, the 75 set was like the 52 Topps to me now, right? It was just, growing up, it was old enough where you didn't really see it much. Every now and then someone would have a Brett rookie or a Yount rookie, but it also had Rice. It had Carter. It had tons of Hall of Famers, and Keith Hernandez, Fred Lynn, as sort of non-Hall of Famers who were great. And so it was just a great set. And I began, the minis were especially exotic to me because there was a story in my family how my cousin went. I think it was like a yard sale or something, and there was a Brett mini rookie there. And he was like, something's wrong with this one. It's smaller. And he passed on it. We still talk about it to this day. Like, you didn't know. So anyway, I was talking to my brother and I said, I want, how cool would it be to open up like boxes of 75 minis and like pull a Brett rookie? And so that's what I did. There was this guy, Mark Murphy, the baseball card kid.
And, sure.
And so I found it online back then. These are the days of, Napster, when you were burning CDs and shit, right? This is like 98, 99, and got back into it. And then from there, discovered that you could buy cards on eBay that you never would have had access to. Like for me, the Fleer update from 84, I never saw that growing up. And now, wait, there's one right there, and there are Mickey Mantle cards right there. Things that I didn't see that were coming through the river of cards through the local card shops. Now you could get them online. And, I suppose the salient positive feature of third-party grading was it created a standardized system that would allow us to know that the card was legit, at least, whether it's trimmed or untrimmed. I believe that it's another topic. But so that's how then I got into it then and just stayed into it. And then there was an evolution through that. First, I was only collecting 75 minis. Then one day, my brother kind of gave me the cold bucket of reason across the face and of water and said, what are you doing spending money on a Wayne Twitchell common? he was like, you could probably get a 52 Mantle for some of these. And I said, holy shit, did you think? And then I looked, and it was like '08 before I held my first 52 Topps Mantle. And so I realized that was insane, and I was down a wrong rabbit hole. But that's part of life. You go through one journey, you hit a wall, and that's not it. Let's go another place, and you eventually find the path that you feel like, okay, this is right. So it's all part of the journey. There's no right and wrong, and so you have fun all at every turn, and so and then I've stayed in that sort of lane since. So that's the whole story.
Well, I appreciate you sharing with me a lot of fun memories there playing baseball, because similar to you, I played every variety possible. But the thing that really struck a chord with me is, I don't know if you realize this, but when I graduated Rutgers College in 2000, we're very similar age, you and I didn't want a real job. I wanted a job, to be fair, I wanted to play for the Yankees or be the Jets quarterback. Neither one was in the cards, so to speak. That being said, I angered a lot of people in my family, and some of my friends' parents thought I was a complete, lunatic, to try to get a job in baseball cards. And believe it or not, my first full-time job after graduating college and having a 4-year degree was working for none other than, that's right, Mark Murphy, the baseball card kid.
Get out.
I worked there for 2 years before I went to Leland's.
Wow, we must have been on the phone. I what's funny is I always
100%.
thought when I heard your name, the first time I heard your name, I always thought, was this the Leighton that I called way back then? And someone was Leighton when it had to be you then. So
had to be me. Yeah, no, I was definitely called first on the phone for a while, and it was certainly a wonderful experience. I got paid fairly, and I was doing a trade and learning a trade, meaning the unopened portion of the market. Matt, that I found fascinating. Similar to the way you were talking about minis, I was seeing boxes of unopened 75 Topps mini, and I'm like, I was losing my mind there.
Yeah.
So that was a wonderful experience. But I really appreciate how you shared, and that was going to be some of my questions I was going to ask you today, about your evolution as a collector. And I also appreciate that even though it might be right for you where you currently are, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for someone else.
Of course not.
And I love what you had said about this notion of collecting, in your case, I guess, a 75 mini set, but I found the same. In other words, I was doing an 86 Fleer high grade set for posterity, because that was, the set that I really wanted as a kid in high grade. And then I realized I have no interest in paying hundreds of dollars for a number 11, 22, or 33 common because it was a tough 9, right? I'd rather have an additional Michael Jordan card. And so really that, with meeting a very good friend of mine, even till this day, Leon Lucky, who happens to be the current owner and proprietor of Net 54, I was introduced to type collecting. And I feel like you and I are similar in that vein. We don't want to be stuck and have to do every single card because someone says you have to, right? I want to buy the card because it resonates with me, and I feel something either for it or for that group of cards. And I wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about that, seeing as how I think you're joking about Wayne Twitchell, but when you realized that Pandora's box was open and you no longer had to, if you will, be a slave to set collecting, and you could go out and buy a 58 Mantle that was gorgeous, or you've always wanted to have a Lou Brock rookie, but you don't need the whole set. What was that like for you? And then what were the first few targets on your list?
Well, it's very liberating. And I think that the problem of ceding our individual our self-autonomy as collectors to other power structures, that's a problem. It permeates the whole collecting hobby. It's, someone or something says I have to have the highest grade. Someone or something says I have to complete the set. So it's amazing. We're too willing to cede that authority that we have as individuals. Well, this sticker on Instagram, I'm always sort of citing things with different grades. So I think that it applies across the board in our collecting choices, and it's really important to reclaim that ability to direct ourselves, right, and not go down a slope where now, wait, I have to do this. Why? Says who? Right? Who says that's what you have to do? So that's number one. Number two is to get more specific in answering your question. For me, it felt very liberating. I still like paging through a 75 set, but I was like, I'll just have the 2 or 3 cards I like, the way I need, and then I'm happy paging through Raw and seeing that. So, and that allowed me to expand my collection. So the first target for me, obviously, it was all the key cards growing up. Like, oh, I want to have a nice 64 Rose. I want to have a nice 68 Ryan. I want to have a 69 Ryan. So there were all these star cards, 74 Schmidt. There were all these cards growing up that were like the ones I wanted but couldn't afford as a kid. And then, and obviously chief among the dream would have been a Mickey Mantle card. So I started with I went to a card show and got a 56 and a 53 Bowman, which were two of my favorites. I loved both of them. The 56 because it's just so cheery and the big smile and the color and the design. And then I loved the 53 Bowman because it was so minimalist and so elegant in the 53 Bowman, its design. And so I went to a card show here in California and bought the two of them, and then couldn't believe at the time. I was like having like a post-spending panic attack. I can't believe what I spent on these things. Could it be like that? Oh, and I got at that same show, I had never seen a Gaudi Gehrig. I bought a low-grade Gaudi Gehrig, and it was just holding these things. It was like I felt if you took a brain scan or an MRI or whatever, it's like I felt like my brain was 10 again, right? Like holding these things, and I said that. How do you put a value on that feeling, right? I mean, that's I think that's a big part of what we're probably at the core of what we're all doing as collectors is connecting with our youth. I would hazard, and so those were the first targets, and then shortly thereafter, once the panic subsided, then it was like. It's like you robbed the bank and it was hard and you're like, well, can I go for a bigger bank? So I went for then I wanted a 52 Mantle, and when I held that was a big day. So that's how it went. It was key cards, the ones that you thought of as a kid, then it was the ones you didn't dare dream of as a kid, and then it was the big boy.
I really appreciate the way that you laid that out for myself as well as anyone who might watch this when we air it. And I feel similarly even to today, as far as, if I go home and I have some work to do at night, and I might be working on a good collection, I often sometimes will take a break from that because that's work, even though I love it. And I will go on eBay and I will try to think about 2 or 3 cards I just really want to own. And I may not buy them right then, but I enjoy that research.
Yeah.
The earmarking or the bookmarking of, I'm like, I really like this example, but let me see kind of what's out there. Let me go to the 17 different platforms that are out there. And you kind of go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I think you nailed it. I don't know how to describe it better than you did, but there really is just this wonderful feeling that happens when you're going out. And to be fair, right, there's little 10-year-old Matt, there's little 10-year-old Leighton that couldn't have afforded any of these cards. Meanwhile, there's adult Matt and adult Leighton looking at these cards, and you actually have like the pick of the litter. And because of all the education we have, we're likely going to buy an example that we're going to love. Mm-hmm. Compared to when we were a kid. Like I see how my 10-year-old Crosby buys stuff. As soon as he gets money, I try to get him to save, but the rest of it's gone pretty fast, Matt. To be fair, no different than you or I would have done when we were kids.
Yeah. No, I still don't save well. So I don't think I've changed much in that regard.
Well, speaking of saving, though, and this is maybe an interesting segue. So for those that don't know, Matt has a wonderful Instagram account, and I think it's Matty C _collection. And not just in regards to the items you share that you're curating for your own collection, but you bring up wonderful discussions about eye appeal. And I wanted to spend some time today on the show talking about it because there's all these different aspects to it. And I think the first place where I wanted to start is, when did this epiphany dawn on you that you might be able to, as a collector, go out, and we'll just use that Gaudi Gehrig as an example. You might be able to go out and get a Lou Gehrig Gaudi card from either 33 or 34 that in many ways either might look or rival a much higher graded example, or in some cases even look better because PSA standards have really changed and evolved over years. And I know myself, because I continue to buy a lot of collections. Mm-hmm. If I buy a 1933 Gaudi PSA 8 that was graded about 20 years ago, I can already tell you I know what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not going to look the same as an 8 that's graded today. So I'm curious, when did that epiphany happen for you, or that process start, when you realize that as much as owning, as you were talking about, a 7, 8, or a 9, even though it's cool, you're a little bit of a slave to this collecting style that's been instilled upon us by the gods above, meaning corporate wants us to own bigger and better. When did it dawn on you that, wow, I can buy something that might look just as good, if not potentially even better, for a fraction of the cost? Do you remember when it hit you that first time?
Yes, I do, because it was delivered to me through one of the most effective forms of communication, which is competition and fighting among your own younger brother. and so when you get popped in the face by your sibling, and I mean that metaphorically and humorously, my brother, who's got a great collection, mostly focusing on Jordan. He's got the most beautiful I've seen in the hobby signed 84 star Jordan. He's got somehow he has a dead centered signed 86 Fleer Jordan, which just to find that card centered like that is insane. 10s aren't centered. So he's got some great stuff. But when I segued into doing a complete Mantle run, and I was buying them initially in about the 7 and 8 grade, occasionally a 9 grade for some stuff in the 60s. He would show me one that he recently got. And he'd be like, take a look at this. And I'd be like, wow, that's gorgeous. And I wouldn't see the grade. And he's like, you're a, pardon my French, idiot. He's like, what'd you pay for yours? He's like, look at this, it's a 4. And I was like, what? And he just kept pounding me with these. Like he had such
a brother should, to be fair.
Yeah. And I was like, I was chagrined. I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, I said, so then I began to try to out hunt him. Right. It was this fun hunt. And I was like, oh, I'm going to find a 3 that looks like an 8. You have that 5. So it quickly became apparent from a sheer common sense standpoint that the more the greater bragging rights belong to he who can find the most eye appeal in the lowest grade while spending the least money. That's really it was a complete inversion of what I had hitherto been doing. And so it really all came about through 2 brothers, collecting and just sharing cards. And then it became there was so much more fun in the hunt to sift through all the different examples for that gem that's a 3, because it has a little crease that you can't see. It's almost like then there was this other layer of fun of sort of beating the system, which is always delicious, right? So you're like, wait, so the grading system kind of is just tantamount to a corner grade, right? But if I'm looking at a card in hand, the human eye is drawn to the image and the evenness of the frame, right? I mean, that's just fact. And no one really looks at a painting and then the first thing they look at is the outer perimeter of the painting, right? You're looking at the central image is what you're looking at. So that experience, that organic human eye experience of how we take in images began to dawn. And then he and I began to notice when I would hunt and he would hunt, it would be like, wow, I just looked through 358 mantles today on eBay and not one was centered, right? So it was like, well, that characteristic is much more difficult to find. It's much rarer than a 7+ corner. And so it just organically evolved. We began in our hunt through many examples. It began to become apparent. Shopping for 52 mantle, my first 52 mantle, I was like, wow, I haven't seen a centered one in months. I've seen a lot of 6s, right? A couple 7s, but I haven't seen even one of those. So that's how the whole concept or how eye appeal sort of came to be. It was a very organic progression.
That's a fascinating story. I appreciate you sharing that with me, and just such a wonderful way for 2 brothers to kind of not only enjoy the hobby, but in a way kind of get the best out of each other. And, I wanted to maybe just touch upon this ever so slightly, because I've been using this terminology recently and it's nothing new in terms of the world, but kind of taking the phrase keeping up with the Joneses and just adding to it, keeping up with the hobby Joneses, meaning the collecting hobby Joneses. And I think, kind of per your point, this is a wonderful way for you to literally go an exact 180 opposite of what everyone was doing, at least at the time. Obviously, it's a lot more prevalent today.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm curious, for someone that this is resonating with, meaning they're either new to the space, Matt, or they're in it, and some of the things we're talking about today is really seeping into their collecting fibers. One of the questions I had for you, and I don't know the answer, which is why I wanted to ask, but as you start this journey and you do the flip, the literal flip, where you go from trying to find the lowest grade that looks the nicest for the best price, now some of those 2s or 3s, as you've alluded to in some of your Instagram posts, sell for just insane money versus what a regular 2 or 3 of that respective card will sell for. So how does a collector know when it's actually too much? Meaning, as much as it's a gorgeous 2 or 3 for the grade, at some point you have to bow out and say, I'm going to wait for the next example that maybe is a little bit more affordable in my wheelhouse.
Well, I can answer that, I think, pretty specifically. The first path to answering that question is education, gathering information. And how do we do that? What's your shopping process, right? For me, I like to see every single example that is sold publicly in that grade and in all the neighboring grades, so I can know what I'm waiting for. So hypothetically, let's take that 2 that's gorgeous. If the card is rarely centered or rarely focused, and I see a 2 that's dead centered and perfectly focused, then what I will do is say, well, are there 3s that are centered and perfectly focused? And what have those gone for? Are there 2.5s? Are there 1.5s? Right? Now, if the answer is a resounding no, or I only see 5 examples in the grade up and 1 example in the grade below that would satisfy me that have sold in the last decade, well, then I know I really want to pursue the one in question to a much greater degree, right? So I think the key variable you have to define in that equation, the right side of the equal sign being how much do I pay for that, is what other examples are in existence that would satisfy me as much as this without having to go up to a 5, 6, 7, 8 plus, right? So I think it's really important to know what the other examples out there look like, not just in that grade, but other neighboring grades, right? And through employing that protocol or that shopping process, that's helped me know, right? Because I'm going, well, I'm looking at a 2. I only see 1 2.5 and 3 3s that I like as much as this one. Am I really going to wait for those to surface? They're probably locked up in collections. So I better go higher. Now, a second piece of information in that equation to define is, what's your budget? Obviously, you don't want to, that's just individual. And then the third is, what's someone's goal, right? If someone's collecting, I don't believe in the concept of overpay. I'm buying something to enjoy for fun, right? That's like saying, if you look at it like a toy or a fun luxury item, right? It's just about your budget and what you're comfortable spending, right? Because you want that. If you're buying it to enjoy until you croak, right? Like, who gives a shit, right? If you're, if my kids better not be concerned at that point, like, oh, we're going to sell his PSA 2 mantle that it should have sold for 300 and he paid 580. So, I hate my father. You know what I mean? Like, it can happen, right? It's like, if you're worrying about me having 3x overpaid, for a card to the tune of, oh, it should have sold for 450 at a great premium, but Dad paid 1,000. What an idiot! But Dad was happy, and get a job. So there's that. So I think that it's if your goal, however, is to flip something, if that's someone's game, then just know that you have to take a look then at what is the range of premium that's been paid in the past. check neighboring grades as well, and look at the bidding history. Again, it's a function of homework. Look at, if I was a flipper, right, which I'd never be, but I mean, certainly we all sell things occasionally to get other things, but that's not quite the same as someone that's doing that, Wall Street arbitrage shit. But if I were to give advice to someone like that, I'd say, look at the bidding histories as well. See how many, if you can, how much bidding activity was between bidders on those items. So understand the buyer pool at that premium that you're about to pay, right? Understand who, obviously the lower the premium, the better the chance you are of making a profit, when you try to flip it. And you're going to try to flip it to someone like me or someone like you or someone who values eye appeal, and that number is growing exponentially, every day in our hobby. So that's how I would approach that. And so I think there really is a way to arrive at an answer to that. And I'm also, as some people know, I've taken a lot of my hobby time and been working on developing something to help collectors undergo that same process. Right. So I'm calling it Eye Appeal Inc. and I'm going to launch it in July. And it sort of allows anyone to, if you're thinking of buying a card and you want to know where it stands, you can grab a picture of it and upload it. If you're thinking of selling a card, you could do the same. If you just want to share, you can do the same. And then the entire universe of collectors can weigh in, because I care more about what fellow collectors who actually comprise the market that's going to be buying the cards. I care what they think most, not what one stranger at a grading company thinks. And so that will help people say, oh, this two, wow, there are 200 twos in the pop reports combined. 130 of them are uploaded on this site. And this one, according to everybody, actually is the third best one, right? So that's what I'm trying to, I've been longing for that in the hobby for a long time. And so I've actually put a lot of my card money into developing that. And so some people I've given a sneak peek of it, yourself included. And so I think it's going to have a lot of utility to help answer exactly what you just asked about.
Well, I'm glad that you brought it up because I wasn't sure if we could go there. I think that your new venture is going to be revolutionary for the type of card buying and collecting that we're talking about, because the way that you talked about the research you do is literally what I do when I buy collections or when I'm buying for myself. But make no mistake, Matt, it's an arduous, cumbersome task.
Tedious. It's so tedious. I have people on Instagram will go, I'm thinking of this. What do you think? And I'm like, to the extent I can help you, but I can't go pull down every photo. I mean, I try to help people when I can, but it's a process. So if I can, not buy a few cards and develop something where we can all do that process, but also I like seeing the rankings. I like people being able to review things. I like a system that will, one of the things I'm building, I don't know if I'll be able to launch it because I've got limits, but I'm also going to do a registry that's a global registry that's ranked solely on eye appeal. So someone shows up with a trimmed ugly 9 that cost $250,000. Sorry, pal. Right. Again, and it's what the whole community says. And someone could show up with a gorgeous 2 that looks like a dead centered 8. People are going to love that and give that God tier status. And so cards like that we're talking about, if I can help those cards get even more love, right? So to see a ranking, right? That would be great.
I think it's really exciting. Super pumped to see it rolled out. As you alluded to, you were kind enough to show me a sneak peek. And you're talking about taking that education that we have just been discussing as being really vital, important part of the process and making it actually fun. Because this is going to be what I'm envisioning, and I'm sure you know the same, is this is a place for other people to be part of a vintage card collecting community and to help each other. Mm-hmm. And to me, and if we have time today, I'd love to talk about it, but I think that one of the most fun things as a vintage collector going to the National is trying to find those lower grade examples with nice eye appeal, but that are not online yet. Whether it be they were being saved for the national, whether it be they just got graded. I mean, listen, that small group I just showed before, right? I don't know what's in here, but there's some fresh stuff in here. That doesn't mean it'll grade high. So if there's a 59 Mantle that looks like a 6 but gets a 3, that's my point. That's the fun stuff I'm looking forward to at the national. So I'm curious. I don't know if you'll be there, but for those that might be going to the national for the first time or returning this year and more immersed in the vintage community than ever before, what is a tip or two that you might offer someone as a vintage card collector and buyer at the national that might help them, get more for their money or just have a more enjoyable experience at this year's national in Chicago?
Oh, I mean, it's hard. Frankly, it's hard to not have a good experience. I went there last year with my brother, my son, and my 2 cousins, and one of them has a son, and we just had a blast. I mean, it's everyone there is a sports fan. There's tremendous athletes to glimpse and sometimes meet, and it's just. It's a chance to do in person what you and I just discussed is incredibly tedious online to do. And so you could do it with raw cards, you could do it with graded cards there. So on my answer to that, I hate to cop out, but I think it's impossible not to have a good time. I think I would say it can be a dizzying array. It can be almost overload. It's a bit daunting how big it is. So I guess I can give a bit of advice, which would be, have a list, have some focus, but also don't be afraid to wander off. You're going to wind up buying something you definitely didn't think you wanted because there's going to be some cool stuff there. That's happened to me recently with Mantle autograph pieces with memorabilia. But again, those rabbit holes, those journeys are those paths to walk. Or if it's fun, it's fine to stray from your what you thought was your focus. Maybe you develop a secondary or tertiary focus. So I think having coming there with a bit of a hit list is good. And then it's just like what I do in my day job, writing for film and TV. You have your outline, but whether you're doing a feature film script by yourself or whether you're doing a writer's room for a television series, you have to be willing to stray from the plan. Right? You have to be willing to freestyle, and sometimes and you could have more confidence in straying from that because you do have a plan. And so you could venture off and say, what's down that road? You may find something that really works, and then you put it in the plan. So that would be my advice.
I appreciate that. So you've done a wonderful job at curating what appears to be not only a wonderful Mickey Mantle card collection, but also memorabilia. And so what I wanted to do with the national upcoming, and obviously the card market and candidly the memorabilia market just seems to be on fire. I mean, we're continuing to trudge forward and things are very hot right now in the space. So in your opinion, I wanted to try to have you outline 1 or 2 or 3 things, but non-Mickey Mantle related. So in other words, I challenge you this summer to go to the national and build a Johnny Bench collection or build a George Brett collection. Just build another respectable Hall of Famer. What are some of the tips we could offer the community? Where would you start? And it's okay if it's cards. It's okay if it's memorabilia. But what I want to do is leverage your experience because you've had a lot of it.
Oh, yeah.
And you clearly have a good eye. You have good taste. And you also care about the hobby because there's no doubt you would not go through with your eye appeal venture if you did not have a passion for our space.
No, yeah. I mean, that's it. Yes, absolutely. Like it's akin to when you said you were getting a lot of shit, coming out of college. Like I want to do that. Like I just can't be in the hobby and see this issue and not try to solve it. Right? It's like if you can, you feel obligated to do. And if I could ever get my money back, then great, that'll be great too. But if I just create something that everyone uses, I'll be happy, right? And so how would I go about that? Well, number one, the North Star, the guiding principle needs to be what you like, not what you think someone else will like. I think that's
great point.
That's for everything, right? Whether it's a grade, whether it's any form of sticker that one individual gives who is a stranger to you, right? Now, again, if you got 500 collectors whose cards you can see, like what I'm trying to build, that I think that there's more utility, and then I give that more weight. But in the absence of that, go with you. You are number one, right? It doesn't, nothing else matters than, are you satisfied? Will this piece make you happy? Go with that. Keep it simple. That's number one. I think that what's interesting, a suggestion, because it's only a suggestion that might help a collector be happy. That's all this could be, that I say would be, I found happiness in a variety of cards and memorabilia. I think that adds a layer. It adds a new dimension. It adds an interesting layer of depth to it. I like the fact that sometimes with a piece of memorabilia, you can glean a bit of the player's personality. You feel connected to the history. Oh, on this day, I know Don Mattingly signed this, and it's connected to, this story about him, et cetera. So I think that, if you look at Mattingly, for example, a piece that I think would come, I came across a piece years ago that I only came across after it had sold, but apparently the Yankees had made a ring for him from the 96 season, even though he retired after the 95 season, when, on his last legs, he manages to bat 424.
Oh, I remember that. I love Donnie baseball.
And it's as opposed to people in their prime who bat 300 in the regular season and then bat 250 when it counts. But side topic. Point is, Donnie did what we as fans hope you would do, let alone at the end. And so they made this ring for him, and he declined it politely. Of course, he was like, "No, I wasn't there." And it's like, he did so much for the team and for the younger players, and it was a gesture of love and respect. And he was like, "No, I can't. I didn't do anything for that." So that's an example of a piece of memorabilia that, if you're a fan of his and building a collection of his, what a great story that gives you a window into the man, into his character. So I think that stuff like that can complement cards. So that would be my advice: is pick only items that you're happy with, that satisfy your eye and you think are fun. And if you were sharing the collection, like doing a show and tell, which is really all we're doing, like little kids in the third grade, we're just doing show and tell. Again, it's that connection to youth. Then would you be excited, instead of here's this card and here's this card, again, which are great, maybe consider adding a piece or two that is a bit of an off-speed pitch to that repertoire, right? So I have one on my desk.
Way to use a baseball pitch analogy in there. I like that.
Yeah, I have one that I keep on my desk. This is I'll see if I could take it out without killing it. It's a signed ball, but to me, this is an amazing example. I know you said no Mantle, but it's signed by Mantle. My best wishes, Mickey Mantle. And that's his 1955 signature, because the ball belonged to a boy named Bryce Martin. That's cool. In 1955, who won his local Little League World Championship a town over from Mantle. So Mantle's old Little League coach was like, "Hey, Mick, when you're back, can you sign a ball for each kid on the team?" That's so cool. It's official Little League baseball. Sure. And so it's such an adorable thing. It gives you such a good feeling. That's a nice compliment to a run of cards. So that, could be, there are figurines that are cool as well. So there's so many other things about the player. That would be my advice there.
Listen, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've been collecting Donnie baseball and Jordan and Jackie Robinson. And what I often find is, the more I allow myself to stray and be open-minded, Matt, then I can find something great. And I don't mean great in terms of value. That's not what I'm referring to. Something that I think is great and really resonates with me. And I do love cards, but candidly, as a professional treasure hunter, it's not easy sometimes when I go into a collection, if I'm thinking about, oh, let me keep this Jackie, let me keep this Shoeless Joe, because I like to eat.
Yeah, it's tough for you, I bet. I bet it's tough.
It is tough. That being said, one of the ways I've dealt with it, Matt, is through memorabilia. And one of the other reasons why I love memorabilia is because it's not bound by anything. So in other words, Michael Jordan, I might go to Chicago this summer And Michael Jordan might have befriended a local kid that we know nothing about. But that local kid, which is now an adult, might come to the show this summer and say, you know, I mowed Michael Jordan's lawn for 2 summers. And he didn't care, but I got 3 wristbands, and I actually have a signed photo with me. You know, I'm making this up, right? Yeah. Like, to me, it's the thrill of the hunt, not just for the cards, but for anything and everything related to this journey that we're experiencing as far as collectors. Some of us are investors, some of us are hybrid, right? Others are flippers. But I think that the more passion you have, and we're kind of bringing this full circle back to this Johnny Bench example I brought. Yeah, I say if you go to the National, don't feel bound to like take out the Johnny Bench checklist and say, yep, I need a 68, I need a 69, I need a 70, because none of those cards resonate with you. Really, all you're doing is wasting your budget, and you could have used it on a signed jersey, or for that matter, a game-used relic card of Johnny Bench that's signed. Whatever your cup of tea is, the place to do it most certainly and to get lost and overwhelmed is the National Sports Collectors Convention in just a couple months.
And further to your point, the cards, you already know what they are. With a piece of memorabilia like this ball I showed you, I had no idea this thing existed. It's a brand new discovery, like your fictional hypothetical wristband from a game, sure, you know, signed by Mike. Like, you didn't even know that, look, you know, it's cool and you dig it, and you didn't even know it was on the radar of existence. So that's another cool thing. And these things they're not mutually exclusive is the real key. They're not mutually exclusive. There's no, you have to do this and then you have to do this. So I think, yeah, having a checklist of things you love is great, but being, like you said, being willing to, you know, limber up the mind, as the dude would say from Big Lebowski, I think is key.
Yeah, great flick. All right, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but I have a couple more questions for you. Mm-hmm. So this one I want you to put in your thinking cap. Aside from your new eye appeal venture, mm-hmm, what is one proposed change that you'd like to see happen in the hobby? It could be with technology. It could be better hot dogs at the National. It could be anything and everything in between. Thanks for
yes, I think more food options at the National that I would not regret from an aesthetic sense, like post-eating, or a digestive sense.
Yeah, you know, listen, I'm on the same page, brother.
So I think you just gave me a freebie there, so I'll take that one for sure. What would I like to see? I'd love to see more granular assessments and grading. I'd love to see like subgrades on every holder, right? With centering, I'd like to see that measured out, because it can be quantified. So I think that's one thing that hits me off the top. What else? I'd like to see. I don't know how you can solve this, but it just seems, and maybe someone can invent a site that can solve it. I'm tapped on building sites right now. I'm tapped, but I'd love something that aggregates all the not the opinions that I intend to aggregate, but all the sales points. Like, there are too many things falling through the cracks that after it sells, I'm like, I would have loved to see that. There's such an explosion of things being sold that I can't. I have officially resigned myself to complete inability to track everything and to see everything. And look, there's a certain amount of fun in that, because it's like it's the hunt, but it's also, I'd still like to.
I'm going to cut you off there, because I felt that pain point that you just shared. Because I'm actually working on something I'll reveal a little more at the National. But I agree with you. I've become, and I love what I do, but I don't like inefficiency unless I want that. In other words, if I'm going to go to the beach and I want to wait on a 35-minute line for a really bad bagel, then I'm going to do that because it's in the sun, right? Yeah. But I don't want to do that in cards just because I'm forced to, if that makes sense. In other words, I agree with you. Like, I search for probably the same guys in every auction. Shoeless Joe, Jackie Robinson, I mean, the list goes on. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit tired of it. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of work. It's cumbersome. And I'll tell you, it's not fun. Mm-hmm. And what's also not fun is, as hard as we all work to try to find these items and secure them for ourselves and our own happiness and our own journey, I hate it when I miss something and it falls through the cracks. I'm like, oh my God, I was sick that day, or I had 17 things to do, and the 16 things got done, but the 17th didn't. So I didn't get to spend 27 minutes to try to find, an item across all these different platforms. So I agree with you. I do think something will be coming soon. Hopefully, like I said, I'll be revealing something at the National that might aid all of us in this. I didn't know you'd be asking this today.
Well, it's a similarly tedious process to the shopping process that I was discussing with you earlier. It's
yes.
So there's the shopping process of I found something at an auction that I like online. Where does this card stack up against others in its grade and neighboring grade, so I can know how hard I want to go after it, right? Where does it rank? What does the community of collectors think, right? Which will help me, decide. And so, and who are those people, not strangers? That's one thing that can be solved trying to. The other thing is, before that, the shopping process itself, too many sites to have to go to and comb. It's like, I don't have the time at night when the day's over to go, wait, there's 17 different auctions running right now, and I'm going to do the same searches at every auction. And while we're at it, the auction ending processes are a little too long. I think, can't we just get it on? Like, it's like, fight.
Matt,
go.
if you've fallen asleep at the computer while bidding in an auction, raise your hand, because I have.
Right? End this thing in a week. Let's all know it's there, and let's all go at it. Best man win. All good. Move on. In bed by midnight.
Speaking of the auction ending process, just because it was something I experienced many years ago at Leighton's, and I actually asked a different auction house recently if they do it. But back in the day, if it reached some ungodly hour, 4 a.m., right, at Leighton's, and it was an expensive item, let's just say, Duke Snyder flannel jersey, they would have both bidders on the phone. There was no bid, wait 29 minutes of the 30-minute countdown, and you're like, how long are you going to keep me up for tonight? Just bring your pocketbook, bring your checkbook.
Yes.
It's okay if you win. It's okay if you lose. And this is what happened. I remember because it was one of the most exciting things I partook in as far as the industry went at the time. I'd be in one room. I mean, listen, I got Johnny here on the line. He's going to take the next bid and hit it at 75,000. So like half, he took the bid. So he'd be on the phone with Charlie. Charlie, listen, it's at 75. It's up to you. The next bid, 77.5. They might take a minute. They might take two. They certainly didn't take 29 minutes.
Yes, yeah, or even 15. And then it's like Chris Rock in Lethal Weapon 3. It's like 1, 2. It's like you're gonna wait. Come on, man. Let's just, what you want to do. I know what I want to do. Let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Let's do the dance. Exactly. And to be fair, right? If you're nervous and going above budget, maybe you shouldn't be bidding on the item.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, whatever you need to go through, like you said, it's reasonable, but it's supposed to be an auction. You know what I mean? We all grew up.
It's fun. Listen, I want it to be not like I'm going to the dentist, right? I want to look forward to this. I'm being honest.
Exactly.
All right. Just
marker bids. It's marker bids until overtime, right?
That's what I mean. So but then even
overtime.
It's like, is it really overtime or is it just the fifth quarter?
Yeah.
Because it really is the fifth quarter, because overtime doesn't really come until you start sweating. And I hate that because they're doing it. Like, you stay up because you really want to win the item. Then, of course, you have the other people yelling at you. Why don't you just put it in your ceiling? Oh, well, because I don't want to feel like I'm being robbed. And I don't, So there's all this. There's a lot of, I agree with you. The auction ending process, I would love it was just uniform across all auction houses. But I got news for you, bud. It's definitely not happening.
I'm waiting for that. An auction house called the ninth quarter, and it's 3 hour periods in overtime. Just watch it click down for 3 hours.
Oh man, listen, this is what happens when I do trading card therapy early in the morning here, Matt. All right, I got two more questions. I think I narrowed it down. One, this is kind of fun. If I said to you, you had one wish for a hobby find. So in other words, a carton of Tito 6-packs, and you get to open them, a Jesus Christ baseball card. I mean, I'm, of course, really stretching here. But if there was a find that you were hoping to have happen, are you hoping for a 52 Topps box? What would you target the one distinct hobby find that you love to see? Doesn't matter if it ever happens.
It has to be possible that it could exist. Okay, so
exactly. So the Jesus Christ card might have been a stretch.
It's not like the Ruth Cracker Jack that could exist.
No, I don't mean that. I'm more something that is absolutely possible, but would just be
so it would be something something with extreme provenance, something that you can trace to its original. So something with a great story I would love a signed card, like a signed Joe Jackson Cracker Jack card or something like that, or a signed M101 Ruth, something that doesn't currently exist, but would come replete with here's the family, here's how it went down, this was passed down, this was I think that would be great. That, or I think we're all tickled by unopened, and certainly there's always an element of wariness. There's always it's easy to be dubious of unopened, but again, provenance is a great, not that it can't be fabricated, but provenance is generally a great safeguard against that. So some type of unopened find of really something you wouldn't think exists. Like, again, the notion of an intact box. We've all seen that picture. I think it was from like a Woolworths or something, of all the 52 tops.
It's been going around the internet for some time.
Yeah, something like that, where you knew it was high number and you know what could be in there. Something where it's a no-brainer. You got to keep it closed because it's such an artifact. It reaches the level of artifact. So that's where I go. Something signed, like Joe Jackson type thing, a card, or an unopened piece.
Well, I love them both, and certainly I've been in love with unopened ever since the days of Mark Murphy. And the notion that there could be a five and dimer or someone who owns several five and dimes, and there's this room that might exist. Believe me, it's why I get up every day. Where my brain goes and realize that this is a completely made up, romanticized thing in my head. But what I'd love to do is have there be just an untouched room that is part of a family that started in the late 1800s, meaning the earliest days of baseball. And no one knows about the collection. So I don't know if there's only cards in it. Is there going to be equipment? Is there going to be signatures? But I mean, from the earliest days of baseball to call it like the 40s, something that's like untouched from that 1880s to 1940s. Don't get me wrong. I want some unopened to be in there, some Gowdy packs, etc. But I'm more thinking, and obviously this is the grandiose treasure hunter in me, I'm thinking about like a movie style. Literally, it was under the floorboard or behind like this, thing in a house, and like people would lose their proverbial minds. Think a time capsule buried like that small, but a whole room dedicated to the earliest days of baseball. And then, to be honest, I love vintage basketball. I'd love to see maybe a basketball item or earliest football item in there, and then some hockey. That would really get me going. But of course, this is a little bit of a stretch.
It's got to be out there somewhere. It's got to be out there somewhere.
That's why I get up every day, Matt.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. It's Indiana Jones with sports.
Yep. So the last thing I wanted to ask you is if you could boil down the hobby to one of your favorite moments of all time. I'd love to share that with the community because you have such a wonderful experience and journey that you've been kind enough to share with me and others through your IG channel. We'd love to hear what one of those moments are that come to mind for you.
Moments for me in collecting, or moments?
Moments in the hobby for you. Yeah.
Moments in the hobby for me. Two come to mind. One is it had to be 1989, and my cousins and brother and I went into our one of our local candy stores on 13th Avenue in Brooklyn, and called Mike's, and the guy had packs from 1985, and we thought it was like the coolest thing of all time. It was like going back in time. And again, that's the difference between what you could see of the world pre-internet. Sure. And so that was an enormous thrill. The notion of opening packs from yesteryear, even though it was probably only 5 years or 4 years, was wild. Like, oh my God, Saberhagen, Gooden, et cetera. You didn't encounter it. You didn't encounter it. So that was one. And number two was when I arrived at the precise date of the signing of the signed 52 mantle I have, to know that that they only played one game. They only hosted one game at Payne Field in Sarasota for the White Sox versus the Yankees. So it had to be that game. That was, all the other details were in the story and the interviews that the gentleman did at the time. But knowing to be able to know that he signed this on this date it blew my mind. So those are the two for sure.
That's incredible. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today on Trading Card Therapy. I feel like I could easily talk to you for another couple hours, but I'll save that for the next time I have you on here.
You got it, brother. Thanks. Pleasure.
See you soon.
You got it.
All right, guys, that was Matt of the Matty C Collection. You can find him on Instagram at MattyC_collection. He's got a tremendous eye, and as he alluded to, he's got a really cool website coming out that's going to be all about eye appeal and leveraging the community's opinion as opposed to just relying on the grader. So stay tuned for more information on that. And of course, reach out to him on Instagram if you have any questions about his upcoming project. I think he said he's going to be rolling it out in July, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a wrap on Trading Card Therapy, episode number 97. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Also wanted to announce that in conjunction and cooperation with the National Sports Collectors Convention, I, along with some other content creators in the space, are producing a short series called The Road to the National. So our first episode just dropped on our Just Collect YouTube channel. And if you enjoy that type of hobby content or today's episode of Trading Card Therapy, then make sure you subscribe to our channel. Until next time, folks, thanks for tuning in.